Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast.
Well, hello and welcome to Spirit Cafe. It is a beautiful evening outside, and I am enjoying the night. And I have a great topic to talk with you tonight about. But first, before we get into that, let me bring in my co-host of crime, the mistress of mayhem herself, the princess of premonition, the Contessa d'Amour, the lovely and powerful Miss Tamara Zoner. Hello, Tamara. How are you this evening?
I'm pretty good. Thank you, John.
Well, Tamara, your new hairstyle and sex change are look fantastic on you.
Thank you. I feel much closer to you now.
Now, for those of you guys on the YouTube channel, you know that you just saw a bald man with a big smile on the other screen. And for those of you who are listening to us on a podcast, a bald man with a big smile was on the other screen. Miss Tamara Zoner is doing the most loving thing that a parent can do. She's spending time with her children, and we like to support her in doing loving things. So tonight, instead of having her as a co-host, we are having man night. We're having the guys' night out. We are having a good time with my good friend, Leszek Mazur. Now, Leszek is someone who I know from my John of New channel, and specifically my John of New membership site, where on Monday nights I get to talk with Leszek a lot about his beliefs about the law of one, the channeled messages of Ra. And we've gotten to know each other really well. One of the things I'll say about Leszek, though, is Leszek is one of those people that you just like being around. He's got a big smile on his face all the time. He laughs. He's easy to get along with, just like Tamara Zoner. So if you're missing Tamara tonight, realize you're going to get the same energy from Leszek as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Leszek Mazur. Hello, Leszek. How are you?
Well, I'm fine.
So, Leszek, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you are, and then we'll dive into the law of one stuff.
All right. So, I've been basically on my spiritual journey for many years, like everybody else, most likely watching this podcast. I grew up in a Catholic environment. At the time when I was growing up, 93% of Poland, when I'm originally from, was actually Catholic. And you really had only two choices. You're either a Catholic or you're a communist. Those were the two choices.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so basically, if you wanted to not to be a communist, you had to join the Catholic Church, which is pretty much why 93% of population was Catholic, officially Catholic.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting choice. It's not even like choosing another spiritual thing. It's literally Catholic or communism. That's so strange. Anyway, continue on. I'm sorry, I'm off on a tangent.
Well, when I escaped Poland, I actually joined the Jewish side of my family, and so I actually started practicing Judaism for quite some time. Afterwards, I kind of jumped into Unification Church and Moonism for a little bit. I kind of got sick and tired of all the dogmas. So I kind of went away and started thinking maybe I should become an atheist, since I love science, but it really never got to me because I truly can't believe that there's no thoughts behind any of this. It just wouldn't make sense to me, especially since, anything that humans create, it always begins with a thought. So whether it's a bridge or a building or a chair or anything you can think of that we make, the very first thing that happens is that somebody thinks of something and then they make it. Mm. And so when you look at this creation, this universe, you have to say, okay, what is the thought behind all of this? And so that's kind of like how I truly began my spiritual journey.
That it's interesting because that gave you a background in Catholicism and Judaism and atheism and Moonism, as you said. So all these different idea. So you were in each one of them. Were you content in any of them, or was it just sort of a salad bar of what you believed and what you didn't believe?
It was more of the latter, and I wasn't really. I didn't really understand back then why I kind of felt that way, until I realized that it was all about the dogma, right?
Right.
And I always thought like I came to the States, by the way, because of communism. I came to the States as a political refugee, and I love the fact that the U.S. basically was built on freedom
Right.
of choice, freedom of religion, and freedom of basically your own spiritual path.
Right.
And all the previous quote unquote religions and associated dogma was basically my way or the highway, which was kind of going back to what I was trying to escape, which is it's either you're Catholic or you're communist. There's nothing in between. And every religion that I so far saw was, okay, you're either with us or you go to hell.
Right.
It didn't really make sense to me.
It's so interesting you say that, because in my family there's a contested member of our family, and I say contested because my research says she was English and everybody else's research says she was Native American. And but whenever I think about the Native Americans, I of course think of her. But the Native Americans were the tribe that she was supposedly from was the Lenape Indians, and they're indigenous to the East Coast of the United States. Well, now they're indigenous to Oklahoma, and the reason they're indigenous because they were marched out there, right? So even coming to the States to find religious freedom, they subjugated the people to take over their land for their religious freedom. I just thought that was so unique. And you're here to get your religious freedom and to be a loving world, and you push the natives off their land. But anyway, off on a tangent. So how did you find the Law of One material?
So it was an interesting journey for me. So it actually began with my ex-girlfriend, who I actually think I became my girlfriend so that I can actually start put me on that spiritual journey. And she was reading a book by Dr. Michael Newton called The Journey of Souls, and I started reading it, and the first few chapters was like, okay, what is this? This is crazy. It only talks about reincarnation, which I don't believe in. It doesn't make sense. But as I started reading it, it kind of clicked with me. It's like, no, this actually makes sense. This is happening, and we are here to learn how to love and how to basically reconnect with the oneness. And basically, we are here to grow. And as I, meditated about it and pondered about it, it became clear that this does make sense. And what was more interesting to me, however, was the fact that it tells me what's happening, but it doesn't kind of tell me the why. And I'm always curious. Always have to ask the why questions.
Mm-hmm.
And nor does it actually kind of tell me, anything more about, like the evil in the world, anything else, evil, quote unquote, or sin, or anything like that. It just like paints this wonderful picture on the other side, and then basically just preparation for the wonderful picture on the other side here. So something was missing, and I wasn't quite sure what. So I kind of, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I saw one about the Law of One, and I got curious, as to what is this. And so I went to their website, and I actually downloaded the free PDF that they have, because the Law of One is actually available, or the channel Law of One is actually available freely to download. And I'll talk about it in a second. But basically, after reading it, I really connected with it. It really sounded like something that that is true to me,
Mhm.
and my personal journey, and
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. So what? Tell us. Give us a synopsis of what the law of one is.
Sure. So first, let me tell you basically what it is externally. It's obviously a channeled material. And what was interesting about this channeled material are a couple of things. First, in order to quote unquote be as pure as possible, all of the channeled sessions were actually recorded onto tapes in between 1981 and 1984. And so basically all those original recordings from those tapes are still available as MP3s on their website. Second, it was the only channel material that LL Research has that was actually done in an unconscious state. All of the other channel materials are conscious channeling. And what Ra was saying during the unconscious channeling was the fact that this makes the channel a little bit better because it removes some of the biases that we have as conscious beings when we channel.
So let me make sure I got that. The entity being channeled is Ra, and is that is the Ra of Egypt? Yes.
Yes, and I will go into it a little bit later.
Yeah, but it needed the entity to make it clearer.
It needed the entity to move out of the body and basically for the body to be unconscious so that they can control the body.
Okay, I understand.
And,
yes.
Yeah, and there's a reason why I say they, and which I'll explain in a second.
Sure.
So that's how the material was presented. It was presented as a total of 106 sessions where it was simply questions and answers where Don, who was the questionnaire, would basically ask any question he wanted, and Ra would respond to that question as long as it was as the answer would not affect free will or free choice of either the audience there or anybody in the future who would actually read this material. So from time to time, Ra would refuse to answer simply because he would say that would remove your free choice. It would influence you.
That's so interesting, because one of the arguments that I run into with, all the soul contracts and the choosing your life before you come and soulmates and twin flames and all the new agey sort of stuff that you get, I really feel it takes your free will away. And what you're saying is that the law of one basically says, you have free will, and I'm not going to give you anything that will negate your free will, because that's sort of a standard or a baseline. You have free will, period.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. So what else can you tell us?
Okay, so next so what is that message? What is the law of one? Because the message itself is obviously the law of one. So what is the law of one? There is a good definition that actually Ra himself or themselves give in the very first session. And I will basically read it verbatim, and then we can talk about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great.
So here it is. I am Ra. Consider, if you will, that the universe is infinite. This has yet to be proven or disproven, but we can assure you that there is no end to yourselves, your understanding, what you would call your journey of seeking, or your perceptions of the creation. So this is the first paragraph. I'm going to read the rest in a second, but even in the first paragraph, you can already see that what Ra is saying is, okay, there's no end to yourselves. Like, you are basically infinite, just like God, because you are one.
Right.
There is no end to your understanding, which means, we continue to grow. We will always continue to grow. There's no end to what you would call your journey of seeking. In other words, your journey of seeking is your own personal thing, and there's no end to it. And you have your own choices to make. No one is going to force you to do it, or shouldn't force you to do it.
Shouldn't. Yeah, they can only force you if you let them anyway. So.
Exactly. And there is no end to your perception of the creation, which means you have your own individual journey. No one and everyone has their own individual journey.
Leszek, that's one of the things that I admire most about you, is that when you and I have these conversations, I've met people who have very distinct, beliefs, and to give an example, I've met a lot of wonderful Course in Miracles people, and I have a lot of people in Course in Miracles who think of it as their religion and want to argue and fight that everybody else is wrong. But one of the things about you is you're so open and so accepting, and so what's the word I'm looking for? I guess really is understanding that everyone is on their journey and everyone is going through their own expression, and you accept it so openly and freely without any judgment. That's why one of the things that's so great about you in the our Monday night power hours in the membership site is that, we come in there and it's just we just enjoy discussing deep topics without any judgment or and a lot of respect for what each other believes. And I think that you're a really good example of that, because I know you and I believe a lot of the same things, but I also know you and I have some places we very, very much part. But there's never been a moment where you and I think have had animosity towards each other. And that's the most wonderful thing about, and it's one of the reasons why I actually want to talk more about the law of one, because this is your belief. And if you're living that belief, then you're living exactly what I teach, but with a different belief.
I actually would agree with that. The belief is fairly different. For example, and I might get into it a little bit later on in terms of what the belief is, but it is fairly different because one of the ideas in the law of one,
and there's our extra co-host in the background.
I know.
It's all right. Don't worry. We like dogs here. It's good. We like dogs here. It's good.
And so one of the key differences obviously is the fact that one of the core messages in the law of one is that the choice is there between the positive path and the negative path. The positive path is called the service to others path, and the negative path is called the service to self path. And according to the law of one, actually both are good. In the sense that you have to choose between one or the other, but both will eventually lead you to the creator. So we can talk about it a little bit later. For now, let me finish the message from Ra in terms of what the law of one is.
Please, yes, take it away.
All right. That which is infinite cannot be many, for manyness is a finite concept. To have infinity, you must identify or define that infinity as unity. Otherwise, the term does not have any referent or meaning. In an infinite creator, there is only unity. You have seen simple examples of unity. You have seen the prism, which shows all colors stemming from the sunlight. This is a simplistic example of unity. In truth, there is no right or wrong. There is no polarity. For all will be, as you would say, reconciled at some point in your dance through the mind-body-spirit complex, which you amuse yourself by distorting in various ways at this time. This distortion is not in any case necessary. It is chosen by each of you as an alternative to understanding the complete unity of thought which binds us all. You are not speaking of similar or somewhat like entities or things. You are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love, light, light, love. You are. This is the law of one.
Wow. Okay.
So
wow.
that's basically the definition directly from Ra of what the law of one is.
Right. So I agree with most of that. Right. I mean, I do. I think that it's very much akin to what I believe.
And then basically, obviously in future sessions they go into details because obviously okay, you have the base. Now let's get into details. So some of the details, as I mentioned, there's a choice between the paths, and where do they begin and where do they end? So according to Ra, there are several levels or stages of consciousness that Ra calls densities. And the reason why they call densities is because how dense our consciousness really is, which basically means how much love can it actually give way and absorb, and how much light and everything else. The very first density is basically the density of the physical elements. So basically the consciousness of physical things, the atoms and etc., and these simple elements. And at that density, there's really no understanding of self. The next density, after millions of years, when those elements basically dance together, all of a sudden life begins, right? At first, bacterial, later on, plants and animals, etc. And that type of consciousness, or the second stage of consciousness, is basically the consciousness of pack or self, in a sense that you belong to a group and you're part of the group, and that is
like your tribe or your herd.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so it's basically the realization that you are your own being, but nothing there yet. It's basically just saying, hey, I am my own being and I belong to a tribe. And this is actually true not only according to Ra, not only for animals, but for plants, especially for trees. And we know that already today. We see how trees communicate via the root system, for example. The next one, the density, or the third density, which we are in, is called the density of choice. So once we basically start self-realization that we are an individual thing, and we are basically part of the whole, but our own very part of the whole. We are presented with a choice. The choice of paths, and it's the paths are basically service to others or service to self. Now, what the raw material states is that many years ago, and by many I mean like literally billions, like the very first third density beings didn't have the veil, and as a result, because everybody saw everybody else as one, no one basically selected the service to self path, because there wasn't, why would you want to enslave somebody who is you?
Right.
For example, and so plus progress wasn't being made because since there was no veil, you knew all your past lives, you know where you are, you're kind of lazy. There's no there's nothing to push you to towards growth, because yeah, you'll get there eventually. Nothing's happening. There's no reason for me to grow, quote unquote.
Right.
And so one of the biggest changes that was made was actually the veil. The veil of forgetting, and basically that was put in place, and what Ra calls, divided our body, mind, spirit into a body, mind, spirit complex, the subconscious and the conscious. Oh, hold on a second.
That's fine. That's totally fine. What I think is interesting, Leszek, is the concept of the veil. That's been said in so many different schools of thought about the veil. And in Sufism, it's God is on one side of the veil and we're on the other side of the veil. And the veil is our fear and our life is struggle against the veil. And what I'm getting from what you're saying is the veil is more like an amnesia. It's a blinder from experience so that we have to learn again. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I find it interesting that the use of the word veil, because in reality, in my personal belief, it's we are blinded of love. We're blinded. We're saying the same things. We're just saying it in different ways. We're blinded from, we're feeling separate from love. So we don't know or experience what love truly is unless we're here having experience to then learn it again.
Correct. And on top of that, what Rai is saying is that we have a choice on which path to take and which love to develop fully, whether it's develop love towards others or develop love towards self. So basically become really selfish and self-centered, and basically either enslave others so that they serve you and they serve your self-centeredness, or basically become a really loving person and basically do the opposite. Live for others and develop the loving relationships with others.
Right.
And to basically graduate into the next density, which is the fourth level density of love, you basically have to either be 51% centered on the service to others path. So in other words, you need to love others a little bit more than you love yourself, or you have to be literally 95% or more self-centered. Anything in between. So if you love others pretty much equally as yourself, or even less, but you don't love, you don't basically truly love yourself, and be truly self-centered, like 95% or more, then you basically rinse and repeat this density, and so you reincarnate again.
So, and this is an observation from my experience with private sessions and stuff. Well, and let me preface this with tying into what you're saying. People often mistake the word ego for meaning someone with a big ego, or ego out of balance to the narcissistic side. And the word ego simply means self-awareness. It just means being aware of the self in any form. And when in Hinduism, they talk about keeping the balance keeping the balance in your ego, keeping the balance in your awareness, not going too far to the narcissistic side and not going too far to the selfless side. But in my private sessions, I find that when someone is so selfless that they give all of themselves to service, they're the ones who end up becoming the sickest and weakest and have the most struggles, because they've given so much of themselves that they're not loving themselves enough to be balanced. And when in Hinduism, the idea of balance is loving yourself equally with others as well. So how does that tie in with the law of one concept?
It's actually a really good question. And the way it actually ties in is when you love others, you automatically love yourself, because you're looking at it not only in a specific time period, but overall. In other words, like if you truly love others, then you're going to take care of yourself so you can continue to support others in the future, not just right now, right at this instant.
Right.
And so, when you are actually loving others, you have to take care of yourself. But you're taking care of yourself and you're ensuring your own well-being so that you can serve others, and not so that you can serve self.
Right. Right.
And sending on the other side, right? Even if you want to continue to serve yourself and basically be self-centered, you still have to take care of yourself so you can continue to do that more and more. So both paths actually force you to take care of yourself, your health and your well-being, etc.
That's interesting. Very interesting. So what's the next thing with law of one?
So the next thing is basically, okay, so what happens after you graduate and you go into this loving place, and you basically continue to incarnate into loving planets? Well, at the next stage, or the fourth density, once we actually have this full understanding of love and have this connection with others, whether it's based on self-centeredness on the negative path, or love and kindness on the positive path, we start developing relatively quickly in the beginning of that stage telepathy, because it just becomes natural, where we start to understand each other without words in our new fourth density bodies. And based on that, we actually group ourselves into what Ra calls social memory complexes. What is a social memory complex? Well, as the name basically gives you kind of a clue, is where a bunch of people decide to actually share memory. So they don't share individuality or character traits, anything like that, but simply just the memories. So, for example, today when you have to go to school to learn stuff, well, what if you already had that memory because it was common memory across a bunch of people? Then you didn't have to go to school to learn stuff because you would already know it. Plus, a person's memory isn't perfect, but if you put a lot of people together and you share memory, then any sort of distortions are kind of taken out, because they onesies and twosies. And so the majority kind of wins, and so the majority of memories, is kind of pure. Right. And so those are basically social memory complexes. So you still have individuals, but there's a shared memory across all of them, and they basically continue to develop on their path. And so the way that some people talk about social memory complexes that know the law of one is the fact that when we look at our guides in the past, we can think of archangels, or the higher level beings, as those social memory complexes who actually truly have this great understanding of things, because of the fact that they have so little distortion capabilities in those complexes.
Yeah. The whole thing is really, really fascinating, and to me, it makes perfect sense to me as to why you would resonate with this, because you are science minded. I mean, you are a scientist in that regard, and so it's logical that it would resonate with you because of the fact that it gives structure to it, and science is based on discovering the structures of a lot of things. So I know very well that you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and a lot of conversations in the membership group, and I'll bet the scientist mind in you can extrapolate from what you've heard from me and what you've heard from you, where we believe the same things. So what do you think? Where do you think that we both unifyingly believe, or that's not the right word, I know, but what do you think we both believe?
We both believe in oneness. Mm-hmm. We both believe in freedom of choice and everybody's individuality and individual path to the oneness. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the core of what ties us together in terms of our beliefs.
Yeah, and I think we both believe in love too, in a loving world.
Well, that's correct, but that's kind of goes without.
Right. When you believe God is love, or
exactly.
Yeah, so we have a lot of the same beliefs, and to me, it's just structure. It's like saying, I believe that Buddhists think the same way I do as well, and I think that a lot of Christians think the same way I do as well, but they have their own structures around it. And I think that, for me personally, the famous line, in my Father's house there are many mansions, I truly believe that means we all have our different way of getting there. And what's your thought on the concept of each one of us having our own reality, each one of us having our own, I guess path is the word I would use, but I often use to simplify it. I often say things like, negative people see a negative world, positive people see a positive world. Christians, when they cross over in a near-death experience, see a Christian heaven, and Hindus see Shiva, And so, do you believe does the law of one talk about the concept of in each one of us having our own individual reality.
So yes and yes.
There you go.
Yeah, to give you like a very typical example from the Law of One is the fact that the channeler or the person channeling the material, she was a very devoted Christian, and her connection to Christianity actually was deep through very deep, and especially through the Gospel of John.
Oh,
And so,
good book. One of my favorites, actually.
I wonder why. And so, for each session, to prepare each session, they would actually have to open the Bible to the first chapter of the book of John that she associated the most with, because that allowed her to actually channel the information better.
Interesting.
And basically give her the peace that she needed to basically leave the body and know that everything will be okay, and et cetera, et cetera.
Edgar Casey had the same sort of situation. He was a devout Baptist, and he would come back after his channeling sessions and not believe a lot of what he just said, and had real struggles with it. And then there were other channeling sessions, and this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, especially hearing about her faith now. In his channeling sessions, there were a lot that were, I personally believe whoever channels, they're bringing it through their own filter. And there's when you read a lot of Edgar Casey stuff, his stuff is very much steeped in Baptist tradition. There's a bunch of very Baptisty things in there, but it tweaks it, it shifts it, and there's still differences, but it still has that frame of that. In the raw material, do you feel that it was a very clean channel without any of her influence?
It was, which is why Ra even stated that the reason why she had to leave the body and they completely took over and make sure she was okay was so that this can be very clean channel. They call it a narrowband clean channel. So basically narrowband in the sense that free of distortions of the channeler. She knew that. Obviously, she was unconscious when the channeling was happening. And when she woke up, she had no clue what she had said. And in fact, in the beginning, she didn't even know what she was saying because Don hasn't asked Ra yet whether she should show the material to her. So she had no clue what she was channeling until after like, I don't remember which session it was, but one of the beginning sessions, Don asked Ra, "Hey, can I show this material to her?" And Ra said, "Yeah."
Wow.
So she actually read it for the first time after a while, what she was saying.
And did it freak her out?
A little bit, because she was Christian, and this pretty much has nothing to do with Christian.
Right. Well, it's funny because when you look at Christianity, real Christianity didn't start until the 300s. Until it was formalized at the Nicene Council, really. And before that, it was just this new belief that was coming up. And what's interesting when I look at this, someone who's channeling, who's a very devout Christian, they're really coming from a place that, for me, with my experience, even the Christians don't match what Jeshua was talking about, because to me it just really says that what he was teaching is more like what you and I both believe, and what it just doesn't tie into Christianity in a big way, because Christianity depends on the overarching deity and the subjugation to it, and I think it's really interesting how someone can be such a devout Christian and have such a strong belief and bring through that kind of information. It's interesting.
Well, it wasn't without preparation. They actually prepare for it for a couple of years. So it wasn't just out of the blue. You can just download the PDF and read the introduction to basically find out exactly what it entails. But
do you happen to know the website?
Yes, llresearch.org.
llresearch.org. And we're saying it here, but I'm also going to put it in the show description too, so people can check it out.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So continue on. What were you saying? I cut you off to ask that question.
No worries. You and I have the same beliefs about Yeshua, and in fact, so does Ra. Like if you read there isn't that much material on Yeshua in the Law of One, but it basically completely aligns with our beliefs and completely removes the dogma and the Christ.
Right. I find it interesting that even the word Christ is a Greek word that means anointed one, right? But so that's so far removed. It wasn't Jewish, it wasn't Aramaic, it was Greek. So
a funny note, one of the things that Ra always, quote unquote complain, because they don't really complain, but complain about is the fact that whenever a social memory complex or somebody came in to help us out, they would be turned into deity. So that's what happened to Yahweh. Yahweh came in to help us out, and all of a sudden, people changed him into a god. Ra came in, they changed him into a god. Yeshua came in, they changed him into a god. We have this tendency of basically turning the messengers into gods, especially if they come in a physical form separate from incarnation, like Yahweh did and like Ra did originally. So one of the reasons why Yeshua incarnated as opposed to, quote unquote, fly in, is because he didn't want to become a god.
Right.
he still
the guy I know didn't.
Exactly. And so
he wanted to show everybody their power, not his. Right.
Exactly. And so it was so sad because he's like, okay, I'm not going to come in directly, and I'm going to incarnate, be put into this third density body, which kind of limits me, just so that I can be, give this message and spread the love and basically put people on the right path. And he did accomplish a lot because he did put a lot of people on the right path, but at the same time, we still turn him into a god.
Well, and now let me ask you, and I kind of know this answer already. I totally feel that humanity is shifting in a very, very big way right now. And I can see the difference from 10 years ago to now, how people are literally starting to step into their own divinity and their own power now. Do you see that? And is that referenced in the Law of One material?
Yes, and yes.
See that? I go for the double yeses every time. That's it.
So I do believe it. I do see a lot of changes. We see it in our children. You see it in your son. I see it in my kids. Yeah. Now, what does Ra material say about it? So the third density, where we have the choice and we have to make the choice, happens, at all scales, individual as well as planetary. So the planet will become a fourth density planet. In other words, you can call it the kingdom of heaven on earth or whatever you want to call it, but it will become that. And only fourth density beings or human beings, but although we won't have the same chemical body when we incarnate into fourth density body, we will have more of a light body. Those when Earth becomes fourth density planet, then only fourth density beings will be able to live here.
Okay.
And so one of the things that has to happen is basically, before that happens, we actually have to make that true choice, whether we want to be service to others or service to self-path, and graduate. Now, there are quote unquote planetary wide graduations, and there's 3 of them every 25,000 years. And the 25,000 year cycle pretty much is now the last 25,000 year cycle. So there were 3 25,000 year cycles where at the end of each one, people could graduate into fourth density if they reached it. In the first cycle, no one graduated. In the second cycle, there were only few, like a handful. I don't remember the exact number, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 200 quote unquote people who were able to graduate. However, those people actually decided to continue to incarnate into third density bodies to actually help us along. So they didn't. So basically, 50,000 years ago, there was no one graduated. 25,000 years ago, few people could, but they decided to stay and help us along. And then finally, the third cycle is upon us. It can span up to 700 years, between now and 700. We don't know how long. But eventually, the Earth will basically decide, hey, that's enough for chemical bodies. I'm only going to allow light bodies, and then basically the chemical life will cease to exist on Earth. And you can only, at that time, you can only incarnate into light bodies if you want to stay on Earth. Now, we do know that, so nothing is 100% certain, but we do know that Earth is more likely than not going to become a service to others, fourth density planet. And so basically it will become, a kingdom of heaven on Earth, as opposed to quote unquote the kingdom of hell on Earth. And so that.
Go ahead. I cut you off.
And I can go into the quote unquote kingdom of hell of what that looks like.
We'll save that for another time, young man.
All right. But yeah, so Earth very, very soon, between now and 700 years from now, but hopefully very soon, will basically see a lot of quote unquote graduation, where people will be able to graduate. And at that time, we will wait for the quote unquote switch, and we will graduate. And hopefully a lot of us will graduate and will stay on Earth. So a couple of quick things. What kind of changes can we expect? Well, I don't know, because Ra doesn't go into details. Ra does say that third density bodies or chemical life as we know it will not be able to stay on Earth, at least not human life. Maybe cockroaches or whatever, but not human life. And he also does say, that originally they came from Venus. So Ra originally developed millions of years ago on Venus. So they went through second and third density on Venus. And what do we today know about Venus is the fact that what killed the life on Venus was runaway global warming. And so, when asked if there are still entities living on Venus, he said yes, but not third density.
Wow.
So this is my own personal guess. It's just a personal guess, but I would say more likely than not, when Earth says it's time, it's going to be time to where basically the chemical life will be cooked, and we need to incarnate into light bodies.
I like mine extra crispy.
So that's just my guess. I don't know. Now,
Leszek, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to add. I know some people ask, okay, why do we incarnate, etc. And that is also some structure that I added around it. And we already talked about it, but I can tell others. To me, it's all about entropy and time. Ra does say that time only linearly exists in this physical illusion, as Ra calls it, and entropy ensures obviously that time goes in one direction. And so what happens, because there is no time on the other side, quote unquote, changes are not permanent. But here, because of entropy and because the fact that time flows in one direction, changes are permanent. So the physical illusion is here for us to grow, because growth is only possible here and not on the other side, which means we will, in order for us to continue to grow, we will continue to incarnate. Now, like I said, according to the Ra material, we'll be incarnating to chemical bodies until we make that choice. And once we graduate, we'll be incarnating into light bodies, but we will continue to incarnate in order to grow.
That's fascinating. Well, I as I've said to you many times, and we have our parting ways in some of our beliefs, and the ones where we match are just beautiful. But we both act the same. We both treat people the same, and we both bring that loving essence to the people we come to. So whatever your belief is that doesn't match with mine, the results are the same. That loving world, that loving expression to me is the key. Thank you, Leszek, for being here today. This has been totally wonderful. What was that website again?
llresearch.org.
I'm writing this down so I don't have to go back and listen to you again. I'm kidding. That's one thing, you guys are listening to this. Leszek and I have known each other for a while, and we tease each other like brothers. And if you're watching the YouTube channel, you'd know we both have brotherly hairstyles. And
yes, we do.
If you put our two heads together, we'd be a butt. but anyway, Leszek, thank you so much for being here today. This is going to be an awesome episode of Spirit Cafe. People get a chance to finally hear what I have mentioned a couple times on Spirit Cafe.
Thank you so much, John.
Yeah. Is there any last things you want to say before we go?
Well, the pleasure is all mine as well. It's been great to finally talk about it in the larger audience.
Yeah.
And hopefully people got something out of it, because no one expects anybody to believe everything we say, but it's the results that matter. As long as you live a loving life, I'll be happy.
There you go. That's the perfect way to lead this thing. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if what Leszek said today had some interest for you, go to the website llresearch.org and look into it. And remember the one thing my mom always said: spirituality is a personal journey. Leszek said it too. Not that he's my mom, but the same thing. The one thing is that you have to find your truth. Don't believe me. Don't believe Leszek. As Buddha said, believe no one, even me, unless it rings true to yourself. And so follow your pathway to your own truth. And if the law of one sounds like something you can really dive into and something you can really get something out of, jump on it. Because I totally suggest that everyone research their own journey as they go along. So thank you once again, Leszek.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Please leave all comments on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page or beneath our videos on YouTube.